Back in the classroom at the Galactic Military Academy, the students sat in complete silence. The holographic display showed the final moments of the Vorthak War, with human ships helping to repair the damaged Vorthak vessels and transport their crews safely home. Professor Keth Prime's crystal body had turned a deep silver color, which meant he was thinking very serious thoughts. The students had been watching the recordings for 3 hours now, and many of them looked confused and troubled. Zix-4471, the young Krillian student who had been so sure about human weakness, was the first to speak. His shell had changed from its usual bright green to a dull brown color. "Professor," he said quietly, "I do not understand what I just saw. If humans had such powerful ships, why did they hide them? Why did they let the Vorthak attack their people?" "That is an excellent question, young Zix," Professor Keth Prime replied. "What do you think the answer might be?" Zix was quiet for a moment, his shell slowly changing colors as he thought. Maybe they were afraid that other races would fear them if they knew how strong they really were? Another student, Mora 6 from the Rigel system, raised one of her 4 arms. "But Professor, this makes humans seem very dangerous. If they can hide such a large fleet, what else might they be hiding? How can we trust them?" Before the professor could answer, a student from the back of the room spoke up. This was Vex Prime, a young Centaurian whose people had been enemies with humans many years ago. "I think I understand," Vex Prime said slowly. "My grandfather fought against humans in the border wars 30 years ago. He always told me that humans were the strangest enemies he ever faced." "How so?" asked Professor Keth Prime. "My grandfather said that humans would defeat his fleet, capture his ships, and then help repair them before sending his crews home. He said they would win battles and then immediately start trying to make friends with the people they had just defeated." The professor's crystal body brightened. "Your grandfather was a wise observer, Vex Prime. And what did he think of this behavior?" "At first he thought it was a trick. He thought humans were trying to make his people weak by being kind to them, but later he realized something else." "What did he realize?" "He realized that humans were not trying to make anyone weak. They were trying to make everyone strong. They wanted to turn the whole galaxy into friends instead of enemies." Zix-4471's shell was now turning a pale blue color, which showed he was starting to understand something new. "Professor, are you saying that humans avoid war not because they are weak, but because they are so strong that they do not need to prove it? What do you think, Zix?" The young Krillian was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "I think humans understand something that the rest of us do not. They know that the strongest person is not the one who can defeat everyone else. The strongest person is the one who can make everyone else stronger too." Professor Keth Prime's body turned bright gold, which was the color of great joy among his people. "Excellent, Zix, you are beginning to understand." Mora 6 looked confused. "But Professor, if humans are so powerful, why do they work so hard to help other races? Why do they share their technology and resources with people who used to be their enemies?" "That is another excellent question. Who would like to try answering it?" A student near the front raised a tentacle. This was Quinn Delta from the water world of Aquanus. "Maybe humans learned something from their own history. Maybe they had wars on their own planet and learned how terrible war can be." "That is part of it," the professor agreed. "Human history is full of wars between their own people. They know better than most races what happens when fighting goes on too long." "What happens?" asked a small student from the outer rim. "Everyone loses," the professor said simply. "In a long war, even the winners lose so much that victory becomes meaningless. Humans learned this lesson very well." Zix-4471 stood up slowly. His shell was now a deep blue color, which showed great respect among his people. "Professor, I need to say something. When I came to this class, I thought humans were cowards. I thought they were weak and pathetic. I was wrong. It takes courage to admit when we are wrong, Zix. But I was not just wrong about humans being weak," Zix continued. "I was wrong about what strength really means. I thought strength meant being able to destroy your enemies. But humans have taught me that real strength means being able to forgive your enemies and help them become better." The other students began to murmur agreement. Many of them were changing colors or making sounds that showed they were having new thoughts about humans and about strength itself. Professor Keth Prime walked to the front of the classroom and looked at each of his students. Class, what you have learned today is one of the most important lessons in all of galactic history. For thousands of years, races across the galaxy have believed that power comes from the ability to destroy others. But humans have shown us something different. What have they shown us? Asked Morrisix. They have shown us that the greatest power comes from the choice not to use your strength to hurt others. They have shown us that mercy is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. A student from the back called out, "But Professor, what about races that refuse to learn? What about people who only understand violence?" "Ah," the professor said, his crystal body turning purple with amusement again. "You mean like the Vorthak?" "Yes, exactly. Well, let me show you something else." The professor touched his control panel and the holographic display changed to show current images of former Vorthak space. The students gasped in amazement. Where once there had been military bases and weapon factories, now there were cities full of art and learning. Where once there had been warships, now there were exploration vessels and trade ships. The former Vorthak worlds looked peaceful and prosperous. "This is Vorthak space today," Professor Keth Prime explained. 25 years after their war with humans ended, the Vorthak have become one of the most peaceful and productive civilizations in the galaxy. They are now some of humanity's closest allies. How is this possible? Zix4471 asked in amazement. Because humans did not just defeat the Vorthak, they helped them become something better than they were before. Instead of punishing them for their aggression, humans showed them how to use their strength for creation, instead of destruction. The classroom was quiet for a long time as the students thought about this. Finally, a small voice from the back asked, "Professor, do you think other races could learn to be like humans?" Professor Keth Prime's entire body began to glow with soft, warm light. "Young one, that is exactly what humans are hoping for. They are not trying to conquer the galaxy or rule over other races. They are trying to teach everyone that there is a better way to live." "What way is that?" "The way of mercy. The way of turning enemies into friends. The way of using your strength to protect others instead of to hurt them." Zix4471 raised his hand. "Professor, I have one more question." "Yes, Zix. If humans are so powerful and so wise, why do they still let other races think they are weak? Why do they not tell everyone about their real capabilities?" Professor Keth Prime smiled, even though his crystal face could not show expressions the way other races could. "Because, young Zix, humans understand that being feared is not the same as being respected. They would rather have the galaxy think they are weak and know they are kind, than have the galaxy know they are strong and fear they are cruel." As the class ended and the students began to leave, they were all talking quietly among themselves. Many of them were making plans to learn more about human culture and philosophy. Some were even talking about visiting Earth or human colonies to see for themselves how these strange, powerful, merciful people lived. Zix4471 was the last to leave. He approached Professor Keth Prime's desk and stood there for a moment, his shell slowly changing colors. "Professor," he said finally, "I think I owe every human in the galaxy an apology." "Why is that, young one?" "Because I judged them without understanding them. I thought their kindness was weakness when it was actually the strongest thing of all." Professor Keth Prime's body glowed warmly. "Zix, you have learned the most important lesson any military officer can learn. True strength is not about how much damage you can do. True strength is about how much good you can create." As Zix4471 left the classroom, he was already planning to change his specialty from conquest strategy to diplomatic relations. He wanted to learn how to be strong the way humans were strong. He wanted to learn how to turn enemies into friends. And across the galaxy, in classrooms and meeting halls and government buildings, other young people were learning the same lesson. The human way of strength through mercy was spreading, one mind at a time, making the galaxy a little more peaceful with each passing day. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars slowly drift past the main view screen. The ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 weeks now, mapping new star systems and collecting data for Earth's growing database of the galaxy. It was quiet work, but important work. Every piece of information they gathered helped humanity understand their place in this vast universe they had only recently joined. The Liberty was not the biggest ship in Earth's fleet, but it was one of the newest. Built just 2 years ago, it represented the best technology humanity could create in the year 2387. The fusion engines hummed steadily in the background, pushing the ship forward at speeds that would have amazed people from centuries past. Yet Jake knew that compared to the ships of other galactic civilizations, the Liberty was like a rowboat next to a yacht. "Captain," called out Communications Officer Amy Foster from her station, "we're receiving an incoming transmission. It's on the diplomatic frequency." Jake turned toward her, curious. They were far from any major trade routes or diplomatic stations. "Can you identify the source?" Amy worked at her console for a moment, her fingers dancing across the controls. "It's coming from the Vorthan Empire, sir. High-priority diplomatic channel. The signal is very strong, which means it's being broadcast from a large ship or station nearby." The Vorthans were one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years, long before humans had even invented the wheel. Jake had never spoken directly with a Vorthan before, though he had read about them in Earth's diplomatic files. "Put it through to the main screen," Jake ordered. The view screen flickered and changed to show the face of an alien being. The Vorthan had smooth, pale blue skin and large, dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Golden markings covered its forehead in patterns that Jake could not understand. When it spoke, its voice was deep and carried the weight of authority. "Greetings, Captain of the human vessel Liberty. I am Admiral Zektar of the Vorthan Empire. I hope this message finds you well in your journey through our shared galaxy." Jake straightened in his captain's chair. "Admiral Zektar, this is Captain Jake Morrison. It is an honor to receive your communication. How may we assist you?" The alien's expression remained neutral, but Jake thought he detected something that might have been amusement in those dark eyes. "Captain Morrison, I contact you today with a most unusual opportunity. Every 100 years, the greatest civilizations of our galaxy gather for the Centennial Grand Prix, a race that spans 5 star systems and tests the limits of our finest starships." Jake felt his pulse quicken. A galactic starship race was something he had only heard about in stories and rumors. No human ship had ever been invited to participate. Admiral Zektar continued speaking. "This year marks a special occasion, as it is the first race since humanity joined the galactic community. The Racing Federation has decided to extend an invitation to Earth's newest vessel to participate in this historic event." Behind Jake, he could hear the quiet gasps and whispers of his bridge crew. Navigator Ben Parker looked up from his charts with wide eyes. Chief Engineer Lisa Ward had stopped her routine system checks and was staring at the screen. "Admiral," Jake said carefully, "this is indeed an unexpected honor. May I ask what prompted this invitation?" The Vorthan's expression did not change. "The Federation believes it would be educational for all participants to see how far various civilizations have progressed in their technological development. Your participation would serve as an excellent example of human determination and spirit." Something in the way Admiral Zektar said the word educational made Jake feel uneasy, but he could not put his finger on exactly why. Perhaps it was just the difference in how their species communicated. "The race begins in 37 of your Earth days at Kepler Station," the Admiral continued. "The course will take you through the Rigel system, across the Cygnus Nebula, through the dark matter storms near Vega, past the asteroid fields of Minerva, and finally to Sanctuary Prime for the finish line. It is a challenging course that has tested the finest ships and crews our galaxy has to offer." Jake looked around at his crew. First Officer Ryan Bell had joined them on the bridge and was shaking his head slightly, a worried expression on his face. But Engineer Ward was leaning forward, her eyes bright with excitement and challenge. "Admiral Zektar," Jake said, "I will need to discuss this with my crew and contact Earth Command for authorization. This is not a decision I can make alone." "Of course, Captain Morrison." Such wisdom shows why humans have earned their place among the galactic civilizations. You have 7 of your Earth days to decide. If you choose to accept, simply send a message to the coordinates I am transmitting to your ship. The galaxy will be watching with great interest. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake could hear the steady hum of the ship's engines and the quiet beeping of various monitoring systems, but no one spoke for a long moment. Finally, Dr. Helen Cruz, the ship's science officer, spoke up from her station. "Captain, I've been monitoring subspace communications during the transmission. There were secondary signals being broadcast on frequencies the Vorthans didn't think we could detect." Jake turned to face her. "What kind of secondary signals, Doctor?" Cruz looked uncomfortable. "Communications to other ships and stations, sir. They were discussing us, and the tone was not respectful. They were talking about entertainment value and betting odds. I think they see our participation as some kind of joke." The bridge fell silent again. Jake felt a cold knot forming in his stomach as he began to understand the real reason for the invitation. They were not being invited as respected equals. They were being invited as the opening act, the warm-up entertainment before the real competitors showed what advanced civilizations could accomplish. "Sir," Engineer Ward said quietly, "I know what you're thinking and I know how this looks. But I also know this ship, and I know this crew. We might not have their fancy quantum drives or their exotic matter engines, but we have something they might have forgotten about." "What's that?" Jake asked. Ward smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who had been underestimated before and had proven the doubters wrong. "We have human stubbornness, sir, and we have 3 decades of making things work when everyone said they couldn't be done." Jake looked around at his crew. Ben Parker was nodding slowly. Amy Foster had a determined set to her jaw. Even Ryan Bell, who had looked worried moments before, was starting to look thoughtful rather than concerned. "Dr. Cruz," Jake said, "prepare a full analysis of the race course and the participating civilizations. Ward, I want you to go over every system on this ship. Find out exactly what we can and cannot do. Parker, plot preliminary courses for each leg of the race. Foster, monitor all communications about this race. I want to know everything they're saying about us." He stood up from his captain's chair and looked out at the stars on the view screen. "We have 7 days to decide whether we're going to let them use us for entertainment, or whether we're going to show them what humans can do when someone tells us we can't do something." The crew began working immediately, and Jake could feel the energy on the bridge change from shock to determination. They might be the underdogs, but they were human underdogs, and that made all the difference. The morning of the race arrived with great fanfare. Kepler Station buzzed with activity as media crews from across the galaxy positioned themselves to broadcast the event to billions of viewers. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching the countdown timer that showed less than 1 hour until the starting signal. 27 ships floated in formation outside the station, each one representing the finest technology their civilization could produce. The Liberty looked small and simple compared to the others, but Jake felt proud of his ship and crew. They had spent the past week preparing for this moment, and they were as ready as they could be. All systems show green across the board, Engineer Lisa Ward reported from her station. Fusion reactors are running at optimal efficiency, navigation systems are calibrated, and all backup systems are standing by. Navigator Ben Parker had his course plotted and double-checked. First checkpoint is in the Rigel system, approximately 47 light-years from our current position. I have 3 different routes calculated, depending on conditions we encounter along the way. Communications Officer Amy Foster was monitoring the chatter from other ships. "Captain, the alien crews are still placing bets on how quickly we'll drop out. Most of them think we won't make it past the first checkpoint." Jake smiled grimly. "Let them think that. It might work to our advantage." The countdown reached 10 minutes, and Supreme Admiral Thelnox's voice came over the communication system. "Attention all racing vessels. You are now cleared to power up your primary drive systems and prepare for departure. The course is open, and all safety protocols are in effect." Around the Liberty, the other ships began to show signs of activation. The Vorthon vessel Stellar Dominance started to pulse with energy, its bio-neural systems creating waves of light that flowed from bow to stern. The Kellyan crystal ship began to vibrate, and space around it seemed to bend and twist. The Astrian shape-shifting vessel collapsed into a needle-thin configuration that looked designed for maximum speed. 1 minute. To race start, came the announcement. Jake took a deep breath and activated the ship's internal communication system. All hands, this is the captain. In 1 minute, we begin a race that will take us across 5 star systems and test everything we know about flying in space. We may not have the fanciest ships or the most advanced technology, but we have something our competitors might have forgotten about. We have each other, and we have the determination to succeed when others expect us to fail. Let's show them what humans can do. 10 seconds to race start, the announcement continued. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, begin. The starting signal echoed across space, and immediately the alien ship sprang into action. The Vorthan ship disappeared into what looked like a tunnel of twisted space-time. The Kellyan vessel simply vanished, folding itself through dimensions that human eyes could not see. The Astrian ship accelerated so quickly that it seemed to stretch like a rubber band before snapping forward and disappearing. Within seconds, 26 of the 27 ships had vanished from normal space, leaving only the Liberty floating alone near Kepler Station. Well, Dr. Helen Cruz said from her science station. That was impressive. Jake nodded. It was, but impressive isn't the same as smart. Ward, give me everything our engines can handle. Parker, take us to the first checkpoint. The Liberty's fusion engines roared to life, pushing the ship forward at a respectable but unspectacular pace. Where the alien ships had used exotic physics to jump instantly across space, the human ship had to travel the old-fashioned way, moving through normal space at high speed, but still taking time to cover the distance. Captain, Amy Foster called. Out. I'm picking up emergency signals from several ships. It looks like some of them are having problems already. Jake was not entirely surprised. What kind of problems? Amy worked at her console, sorting through the various signals. The Nexus Collective ship is reporting drive system failures. Apparently, their probability engines calculated themselves into a paradox and shut down. The Hegemony vessel is drifting after their exotic matter containment system overloaded, and I'm getting a distress call from the Stellar Dominance. The Vorthan ship? Jake asked. What happened to them? Dr. Cruz looked up from her instruments. According to their emergency broadcast, their bio-neural computing systems are experiencing cascade failures. The stress of their dimensional jump caused some kind of breakdown in their organic computers. Jake felt a mixture of concern and vindication. He was genuinely worried about the safety of the other crews, but he was also starting to see that Engineer Ward had been right about the problems with overly complex technology. How many ships are still in the race, he asked. Amy checked her readings. 23 ships are still actively racing, Captain. 4 have dropped out due to technical failures. As the Liberty continued toward the first checkpoint, more problems became apparent among the other racers. The ships that had jumped far ahead were discovering that their advanced drives required enormous amounts of energy and significant cooling time between uses. Some were finding that their systems had been damaged by the stress of their rapid acceleration. The Liberty, meanwhile, continued at a steady pace. The fusion engines ran smoothly, requiring only minor adjustments from Ward's engineering team. The ship's systems were all operating within normal parameters, and the crew was comfortable and alert. Captain, Navigator Parker called out. I'm detecting several alien ships ahead of us. It looks like they're stopped for repairs or system cooldowns. Jake looked at the tactical display Parker had put up on the main screen. Sure enough, several of the racing ships were floating motionless in space, apparently dealing with various technical issues. Take us past them, but keep a safe distance, Jake ordered. And Amy, monitor their communications in case anyone needs assistance. As the Liberty flew past the stopped alien vessels, Jake could see the surprised reactions of their crews. These ships had been so far ahead that their crews probably thought the race was already over. Now they were watching the supposedly primitive human ship crews past them while they dealt with system failures and overheated drives. Captain, Dr. Cruz reported, I'm analyzing the performance data from the alien ships. It appears that many of them pushed their systems beyond safe operating limits, trying to achieve maximum speed right from the start. Their drives are more advanced than ours, but they're also much more delicate. Jake nodded. It's like the difference between a race car and a pickup truck. The race car is faster on a perfect track, but the pickup truck will keep running no matter what you put it through. Hours passed as the Liberty continued toward the Rigel system. More alien ships began to experience problems. Some had drive systems that overloaded from continuous use. Others found that their advanced navigation systems were too sensitive and kept shutting down when they encountered unexpected conditions in space. When the Liberty finally reached the first checkpoint at Rigel Gamma, Jake was amazed to discover that they were in 16th place out of the 23 ships still racing. 11 ships had completed the first leg ahead of them, but 12 others had either dropped out completely or were still struggling with technical problems behind them. Checkpoint confirmed, came the announcement from the race officials. UES, Liberty, you are cleared to proceed to the second checkpoint in the Cygnus Nebula. As they prepared to leave Rigel Gamma, Jake noticed something that made him smile. Several of the alien ship captains were trying to contact the Liberty, apparently wanting to ask questions about human engineering and how their primitive systems were proving so reliable. Amy, Jake said, respond to their hails. Tell them, we'd be happy to share technical information after the race is over. Right now, we have a second checkpoint to reach. The Liberty turned toward the Cygnus Nebula, its fusion engines burning steadily and reliably. Behind them, more advanced ships were still dealing with the consequences of trying to do too much, too fast. Ahead of them, the nebula waited with new challenges that would test every ship and crew to their limits. Jake looked around at his crew, all of them focused on their tasks and working together like the well-trained team they were. Maybe they did not have the most advanced technology in the galaxy, but they had something that might be even more valuable: the ability to keep going when things got difficult. Second leg of the race, Jake announced to his crew. Let's see what other surprises are waiting for us. The Liberty entered the Cygnus Nebula at full speed, its hull cutting through the thick clouds of gas and dust that filled this region of space. Captain Jake Morrison watched the main screen as colorful streams of cosmic material flowed past the ship like an ocean of light. Sensors are having trouble penetrating the nebula, Dr. Helen Cruz reported from her science station. The gas clouds are interfering with our navigation systems. Navigator Ben Parker was working hard at his controls, trying to plot a safe course through the dense material. Captain, I'm getting conflicting readings from our instruments. The magnetic fields in here are stronger than we expected. Jake could hear similar problems being discussed on the emergency frequencies that Communications Officer Amy Foster was monitoring. Several alien ships were reporting that their advanced sensor systems were being overwhelmed by the nebula's interference. The Kellyan Crystal ship is having major problems, Amy reported. Their multi-dimensional sensors can't lock onto anything stable in here. They're flying blind. Engineer Lisa Ward looked up from her station with a thoughtful expression. Captain, what if we try something different? Our sensors might not be as advanced as theirs, but they're also not as complicated. We might be able to see things they can't. Jake nodded. What do you have in mind? Ward began working at her engineering console. I'm thinking we go back to basics. Instead of trying to use complex sensor sweeps, let's use simple radar and visual navigation. The nebula might confuse fancy sensors, but it can't hide solid objects from basic detection methods. Dr. Cruz looked skeptical. That's a very primitive approach, Ward. Sometimes primitive works, Ward replied with a grin. Jake made his decision. Do it, Ward. Parker, work with her to plot a course using basic navigation techniques. As the Liberty continued deeper into the nebula, they began to pass alien ships that were stopped or moving very slowly. The advanced vessels that had seemed so impressive at the starting line were now struggling with systems that were too sensitive for the harsh conditions inside the nebula. Captain, Amy called out, I'm receiving a distress call from the Astrian ship. Their programmable matter hull is being corrupted by the nebula's radiation. The matter is changing into configurations they didn't program. Through the view screen, Jake could see the Astrian vessel in the distance. Its hull was shifting and changing in random patterns, clearly out of control. The ship that had been designed to adapt to any situation was now adapting in ways its creators had never intended. Are they in immediate danger? Jake asked. Dr. Cruz checked her readings. Their life support systems are still functioning, but their drive systems are failing. They're going to be stranded if they can't regain control. Jake felt the familiar weight of command responsibility. Amy, send them a message. Tell them we'll stay in communication range in case they need assistance. Captain, First Officer Ryan Bell said quietly, if we stop to help them, it could cost us our position in the race. Jake looked at his first officer. Ryan, we're not going to leave people stranded in space just to win a race. That's not who we are. The Liberty continued through the nebula, but at a slower pace that would allow them to respond if the Astrian ship needed rescue. Meanwhile, Ward and Parker had figured out a way to use the ship's basic systems more effectively than anyone had thought possible. Captain, Parker called out excitedly, I think I've found something. The nebula's magnetic fields are actually following predictable patterns. If we follow the field lines instead of fighting them, we can use them to help push us forward. Ward was already implementing Parker's discovery. I'm redirecting power from our non-essential systems to boost our magnetic field generators. We can ride the nebula's own energy currents like a river. Jake watched in amazement as their speed began to increase. The Liberty was actually using the nebula that was stopping other ships as a source of additional power. It was exactly the kind of creative problem-solving that humans were known for. Amy, are you getting any communications from other ships about this technique? Jake asked. Amy checked her equipment. Several alien crews are trying to analyze what we're doing, Captain. They're scanning us to figure out how we're moving so efficiently through the nebula. Dr. Cruz looked up from her science station with surprise. Captain, we just passed 2 more ships. We're now in 12th place. Jake felt a surge of pride in his crew. They were not just surviving the race anymore. They were actually competing. As they approached the second checkpoint, Jake could see several alien vessels ahead of them that were moving much more slowly than they had during the first leg of the race. The ships that had used their most advanced systems to jump far ahead at the beginning were now paying the price with system failures and overheated drives. Third checkpoint is in the dark matter storm region near Vega, Parker reported as they reached the nebula's edge. That's going to be even more challenging than this was. Jake nodded. The dark matter storms were known to be one of the most dangerous regions in the galaxy. Space itself became unstable there, with gravity fields that shifted randomly and time distortions that could trap ships for days or even years. Checkpoint confirmed, came the announcement from race control. UES Liberty, you are now in 10th place. You are cleared to proceed to the third checkpoint. 10th place. Jake could hardly believe it. They had passed 14 other ships, many of them representing civilizations that had been traveling in space for thousands of years longer than humanity. Captain, Dr. Cruz said, her voice filled with excitement. I'm analyzing the performance data from all the ships. Do you want to know something interesting? What's that? We're the only ship that hasn't had a single system failure yet. Every other vessel in the race has reported at least one major technical problem. Some have had multiple failures. Ward smiled with satisfaction. That's because we built our systems to work under real conditions, not perfect laboratory conditions. When you expect things to go wrong, you design equipment that can handle problems. As they left the Cygnus Nebula behind and headed toward the dark matter storms, Jake reflected on what they had accomplished so far. They had proven that sometimes the newest, most advanced technology was not necessarily the best technology. They had shown that experience, creativity, and reliable engineering could compete with the most exotic scientific achievements. But the race was far from over. The dark matter storms would test every ship and crew in ways that no one could fully prepare for. The region near Vega was known for destroying ships that were not careful, and even careful ships sometimes did not survive. All right, everyone, Jake announced to his crew. We've done better than anyone expected so far, including ourselves. But the hardest part is still ahead of us. The dark matter storms don't care how advanced your technology is or how reliable your systems are. They're dangerous for everyone. Engineer Ward checked her systems one more time. Captain, all our equipment is running within normal parameters. We're as ready as we can be. Navigator Parker had already begun plotting courses through the storm region. I've identified 3 possible routes through the dark matter field. Each one has different risks and advantages. Jake looked at his crew, these people who had already exceeded every expectation. They had taken a ship that everyone called primitive and used it to outperform vessels that cost more than entire human space stations. Then let's go show them what else humans can do, Jake said. Third checkpoint. Here we come. The Liberty turned toward Vega and the dark matter storms that waited ahead. Behind them, several alien ships were still struggling with the after effects of traveling through the nebula. Ahead of them, the most dangerous part of the race was about to begin. The dark matter storms near Vega were worse than anything Captain Jake Morrison had ever seen. Space itself seemed to be twisted into impossible shapes, with gravity fields that pulled in different directions at the same time. The Liberty shook and groaned as it flew through regions where the laws of physics seemed to change from moment to moment. "Captain," Dr. Helen Cruz called out from her science station, "I'm reading massive gravitational distortions ahead. Some of the alien ships are caught in temporal loops. They keep repeating the same few seconds over and over again." Jake could see the trapped vessels on the main screen, flickering in and out of existence as they were caught in bubbles of twisted time. The advanced temporal displacement engines that had seemed so impressive at the start of the race had become death traps in the unstable space of the dark matter storms. 3 more ships have dropped out, Communications Officer Amy Foster reported. The Nexus collective vessel just vanished completely. Their probability drive calculated that they had 0 chance of existing and apparently decided to prove itself right. Navigator Ben Parker was working harder than Jake had ever seen him work, constantly adjusting their course to avoid the worst of the gravitational anomalies. "Captain, I'm having to recalculate our route every few seconds. The storm patterns keep changing." Engineer Lisa Ward was monitoring every system on the ship, making constant small adjustments to keep everything running smoothly. "Our fusion engines are handling the stress better than I expected. The magnetic containment fields are actually using the storm's energy to help stabilize the reaction." Jake felt a surge of pride in his crew. While other ships were being torn apart by conditions their designers had never imagined, the Liberty was adapting and surviving through the skill and determination of its human crew. "Amy, what's our current position in the race?" Jake asked. Amy checked her instruments. "We're in 6th place, Captain. 5 ships are still ahead of us, but 2 of them are barely moving. The storm has damaged their drive systems." As they flew deeper into the dark matter field, Jake saw something that made his heart race. The ship directly ahead of them was the famous Vorthon vessel Stellar Dominance. The massive ship that had seemed so impressive at Kepler Station was now limping through space, its bio-neural systems clearly struggling with the chaotic environment. "The Vorthon ship is in trouble," Dr. Cruz reported. "Their organic computers can't process the constantly changing conditions. They're flying almost blind." Jake made a decision that surprised even himself. "Amy, open a communication channel to the Stellar Dominance." "Captain," First Officer Ryan Bell said quietly, "they're our competition. They're also fellow spacers." "In danger," Jake replied firmly. The communication screen flickered to life, showing the face of Admiral Zektar. The Vorthon looked tired and worried, very different from the confident being who had first contacted them weeks ago. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Zektar said, his voice strained, "I did not expect to hear from you under these circumstances." "Admiral, we can see that you're having difficulties. Do you need assistance?" The Vorthon's expression showed surprise. "You would help us, even though we are competing against each other?" Jake smiled. "Admiral, we're all spacers out here. The universe is dangerous enough without us making it worse for each other." Admiral Zektar was quiet for a moment. "Captain, your ship seems to be handling these conditions better than ours. How is this possible?" Engineer Ward stepped forward. "Admiral, our systems are simpler than yours, but that makes them more stable. We don't have bio-neural computers that can get confused, and our fusion engines work the same way no matter what's happening to space around us." "Fascinating," the Admiral said. "We designed our ships to be as advanced as possible, but perhaps we made them too complicated for conditions like these." Jake nodded. "Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one that works." The Liberty continued through the storms, and Jake was amazed to see that they were slowly passing more of the advanced alien ships. The vessels that had jumped so far ahead at the beginning of the race were now paying the price for their complexity. Their exotic drive systems were too delicate for the harsh realities of deep space racing. Fourth checkpoint coming up, Parker announced. The asteroid fields of the Minerva system. Jake had been dreading this part of the race. Flying through asteroid fields required precise navigation and quick reflexes. The alien ships had sophisticated autopilot systems and advanced sensors for this kind of work. But as they entered the asteroid field, Jake discovered something unexpected. The alien autopilot systems were too rigid, trying to calculate perfect paths through the constantly moving rocks. When the calculations became too complex, the systems froze up or made mistakes. "Captain," called out pilot Steve Collins, who had taken over manual control of the ship. "Their computers are trying to plot mathematically perfect courses. But that's impossible in a field like this. They need to fly by instinct and experience." Steve began weaving the Liberty through the asteroids with a skill that amazed even Jake. The pilot was not trying to calculate perfect paths. Instead, he was reading the flow of the asteroid field and moving with it, like a dancer following music only he could hear. "We just passed another ship," Amy reported excitedly. "We're in fourth place now." As they cleared the asteroid field and approached the final checkpoint, Jake could hardly believe what had happened. The Liberty, the ship that everyone had expected to fail in the first few hours, was now in fourth place with only the final leg remaining. "Final checkpoint confirmed," came the announcement from race control. "UES Liberty, you are cleared to proceed to the finish line at Sanctuary Prime. Current position, fourth place." The final approach to Sanctuary Prime was the most challenging part of the entire race. The planet's gravitational field was filled with anomalies that made normal landing procedures impossible. Ships had to navigate through a maze of gravitational distortions while making a precision landing on a target zone barely large enough for a single vessel. "Captain," Dr. Cruz reported, "two of the ships ahead of us are in serious trouble. The gravitational anomalies are interfering with their exotic drive systems." Jake watched in amazement as the ship in third place, a vessel from the Astrian Confederacy, simply folded in on itself and vanished when its programmable matter could not handle the conflicting gravitational forces. "We're in third place," Amy announced. The ship in second place, representing the Kellian Republic, was trying to use its dimensional folding abilities to bypass the gravitational maze. But the planet's anomalies were preventing the ship from existing in multiple dimensions at once. The vessel flickered in and out of normal space before finally appearing in a stable orbit, damaged but intact. That left only one ship ahead of them, a vessel from the hegemony that was using pure brute force to push through the gravitational field. But as Jake watched, he could see that the ship was being torn apart by the stress. "Captain," Steve Collins said from the pilot station, "I think I can do this. The gravitational anomalies aren't random. They follow patterns like currents in a river. If I can read the patterns, I can use them to help us land." Jake looked at his pilot, this human being who was preparing to attempt something that had defeated ships with technology thousands of years more advanced than theirs. "Do it, Steve." The Liberty began its final descent toward Sanctuary Prime. Steve flew the ship with an intuitive skill that no computer could match, reading the gravitational currents and using them to guide the ship safely toward the landing zone. As they touched down, Jake realized they had done something impossible. They had not just finished the race, they had finished in third place, ahead of civilizations that had been traveling in space since before humans had discovered fire. Danikando communication system crackled to life with messages of congratulation from across the galaxy, but the message that meant the most came from Admiral Zektar. "Captain Morrison," the Vorthan said, "when I first invited you to this race, I thought we would be providing entertainment for the galaxy. Instead, you have taught us something we had forgotten. Sometimes the most advanced technology is not the best technology. Sometimes the best technology is the technology that works when everything else fails." Jake looked around at his crew. These humans who had proven that determination, creativity, and reliable engineering could compete with anything the galaxy had to offer. "Admiral," Jake replied, We learned something too. We learned that we belong, out here among the stars, not because we have the best technology, but because we have the best people. The UES Liberty sat proudly on the surface of Sanctuary Prime, its simple fusion engines finally silent after the greatest race in galactic history. They had not won first place, but they had won something more important. They had earned the respect of the galaxy and proven that humanity deserved its place among the stars.